Alright, we'll start the Skyraider tutorial video here. Work on the Skyraider the last couple days. Skyraider was an aircraft that came out in the early 40s, just after World War II. It is a 12-cylinder radial um, engine aircraft. It had a very long service life. They stopped using it in the U.S. in the early 70s. It was a really cool aircraft. It's really big. It's supposed to be a big plane. It was an attack aircraft. They actually went through a lot of iterations where they even had, I think, passenger seats for something like 4 to 6 people behind the cockpit there. So I've simulated that. It's not done, but it's in there. A little bit of a hop here. I gotta figure out what's up with that. Um, so kind of do a quick walk around. You have your big nose section here, which is where that radial is housed. I've actually made a radial. It's not a um, 18-cylinder radial like the real one was, but it's bigger than that just because of storm arcs and the need to kind of overdo everything because I couldn't get the power where it needed to be. So this is a much bigger radial, but it's a radial trying to keep with that whole theme. Exhaust systems where it should be. There's two on the real one. There's two exhausts right there. We have our center tank, which is for fuel. We have 5 hard points per wing. Real one had 15 hard points. This one's currently at 11. Have retractable gear, which is pretty accurate to the real model. Has folding wings. This is the Air Force livery. Even the Air Force plane had folding wings, which I just found out today, actually. I thought it was just the Navy versions, but the Air Force version did have folding wings as well. We have ailerons and flaps. I actually made these flaperons, which they act as ailerons too, and that was just to kind of overcome some of the maneuvering deficits from Stormworks. Um, we have the U.S. emblem on this side. We have a rescue arrow on that side. This is our refueling port here. It has a central tank. I actually put a little bit more fuel on this than the real aircraft. The real one holds 380 internally. This tank, I think, is 180 gallons, 380 gallons in the main. So there was a version that held, I think it was designed to hold, I think, 4 to 6 people. I have to look at the numbers, but I put in, what's that, 5, 6, 8 in here. So as you can see, you can sit some people in here. They really did have a version that was like that, so they also had some versions that had that single pilot seat, and then they had 2 seats in here for other operators. Coming towards the tail, the real gear on the real Skyraider was back here, and it was retractable, but we don't have thin enough wheels without me doing XML editing to get this wheel size down or using mods. So the wheels should really be here and be retractable, but I put it back here just because I can pivot it here, and I don't have to ruin the tail lines. It would have a hook for the Navy version, but I'm not going to simulate a hook. Maybe later if somebody has a carrier that I could actually make a hook work, I'd do it. Elevators and tail. Tail's pretty accurate to the real model. The flaps, I do a smaller degree than the real aircraft just because of, again, storm marks, and it'll end up hitting the prop if you have too much lift forward there. So that pretty much does the walk around video. Next video, I'll go ahead and do a internal tour, and I'll actually do the internal tour now, and then next video I can do a startup and flight. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump up on the wing into the cockpit. Do a quick cockpit tour. So the only gauges you have in your seat are 1 and 2. 1 is throttle up, 2 is throttle back. You can also manually control the throttle, of course. The benefit of this is as you're coming in for a landing, you're going to want to be able to modulate your thrust to come in, and especially when you're landing a tailwheel aircraft, you're going to have to get the orientation right so you don't get a prop strike. And so like I could be looking straight ahead watching, and as you can see, I can just use 2 to chop the thrust or add a little thrust if I'm coming in slow. So to quickly go through the gauges here, these are Thales gauges from his mod pack. I really wish they'd add these to the regular game. I wish the devs would grab them and put them in. They're pretty much perfect as they are. So they actually work great in this aircraft. All the numbers on these gauges, on the airspeed gauge, match up perfectly with this aircraft. So we have airspeed and knots. This aircraft, stall speed was, I think, between 70 and 75. You really want to keep like 80 to 90 at the lowest in this, or else you'll start to stall and you start losing rudder effectiveness, or elevator effectiveness rather. And it actually feels, I'm a commercial pilot in real life. And so it actually kind of does wallow like a real aircraft at those speeds. So it's good to keep it. Usually I'll come in at 100 and then start slowing down to 90 right over the threshold and chop it for a touchdown. But so the aircraft, the real aircraft's top speed's about 260 knots. This will go between 220 and 230 in game. Real aircraft cruise speed was, I think, like 172 to 178. This will cruise at 190 with full throttle, full prop, which gives us really good fuel economy. Have the artificial horizon, vertical speed gauge, again Thales and working. Another Thales gauge for altimeter. Have our compass ball. We have engine RPM and temperature. We have our fuel in gallons. Real plane holds 380. This one will hold 535 internally. There's a low fuel light that will come on if you have less than 50 gallons. We have our master power. We have our engine start stop, our battery delta, which just must have, maybe I have infinite electricity on. I do not. So that gauge must have just got disconnected with me doing something. So I'll have to reconnect that. That should be reading either positive or negative, telling you if you're charging or discharging the battery. So this should actually be showing, and actually, let me turn it on. There we go. I just didn't have the master power on. So you can see our battery is showing it's losing electricity, of course, because I turned the master on, and it's showing we're discharging electricity. So if we have the engine on, it will automatically turn the generators on, and it auto clutches the generators, so you're not wasting any energy. And that number will go positive, telling you you're charging the batteries. Come across here, we have brake release. Brakes will start on. That's probably why the aircraft is hopping a little bit. And we have a light showing that the brakes are on. Down here we have our wing fold. Wings down, wings up. This is our canopy, so we can press that to close and open the canopy. Here we have our flaps up and our flaps down. So if we hold our flaps down, you can see our flaps are going down. As I said, these are flapperons, which I don't believe the real plane had. As you can see, when we actuate our ailerons, the flaps are also going. That will aid with our roll. So, in the real aircraft, you would have these ailerons all the way across. I might actually, so they would be going all the way across there. So I might try to add another one on there. I have to see how it matches up, but the real aircraft had ailerons that went all the way across, so because I have shorter ailerons on here, I added flapperons. So you can also put the flaps up. So as you can see, they work no matter what the flap position is flapperons. Gear actuation here. Just kind of move ahead here. You can see we have a flare gun, flashlight. We have an oxygen mask and binoculars there. Behind us we have a parachute. And we have a fire extinguisher. Coming across here, we have our throttle. Some information on here. You'd want to follow the procedures on this so you don't get a prop strike. When you're taking off, I'll show later in the takeoff video. If you follow these instructions, you won't have a prop strike and you'll take off nicely. So you'd want to do a takeoff at 0.35, about 0.35%. If you go more than that, you're going to get too much flow over these flaps, and it's going to pitch the nose up, or pitch the nose down, pitch the tail up with the added airflow, and you'll end up hitting the prop. The game seems to also simulate torque pretty well. I think they lost about like 26 of these in real life, because if you went full throttle with that huge radial on a wave off in the Navy, it will torque the plane. It will do a big, big turn counter to the prop direction, and you'll dip a wing, and they were putting them right in the drink off the carrier. They lost 26 of them doing that. So like if you do a go around, you don't, you want to kind of go to half thrust or something. It's very powerful, so you don't need a ton of thrust on that. So there's our throttle. We have prop on this side. Can fully control the prop, so 0 prop is what you want to start with, just so you don't have a ton of load trying to start that engine. You want to take off and taxi at 10% prop. In real life, when you're doing takeoff operations, you would want to do low pitch, high RPM, so you don't want a lot of prop pitch. That gives you a high RPM on your engine. It's for safety reasons. If you had to go full thrust to do a go around, or there was an emergency, you want to make sure that you can spin up quickly. If you had a lot of prop pitch, you're not going to be able to spin that engine up. If you're taking off and landing, again, 10%, 60% is your max speed. Again, my degree is in aeronautical science. So the reasoning behind that is the more you have, the greater the prop pitch, the more work the engine's having to do. So of course it's going to need more torque, and that's going to lower your RPM because you have more work to be done by the engine. So for max speed, you need a higher RPM, so you're going to need a less prop pitch. So 60, it actually should be 50. I have to change that. I did some testing. 50% is going to be your max speed. That will get you up to between 220, 230 knots at full throttle, 50% prop. 100% prop is going to give you max endurance. That's going to be your most efficient. That's going to give you about 190 knots. So full throttle and 100% prop gives you about 190 knots, and it's going to be really efficient. From there, we'll go down to our weapons panel. So I'm actually just going to push this prop forward. Actually, bring it back a little bit. So we have 2 sets of weapons panels. We have the right side and we have the left side. These correspond with the different hard points. So this starboard panel is for the hard points on the starboard side. There's a couple that are not for the starboard side. There's your master arm. Your master arm needs to be on for you to be able to use any of the weapons. And underneath that, you have guns. So hopefully with the weapons DLC, we can get some guns that I could put in the wings. So if you wanted to use guns, you would do master arm, guns, and then the trigger command off the seat is spacebar, so you could press and hold spacebar and you get that. So that's how any of the weapons are going to work. So you need master arm, you need to select the weapons you want, and then spacebar. So for example, I would recommend you drop your stores in groups. So starting with the most outside one where my cursor is, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's on your port panel. So that's 1 through 5 on port. This is 1 through 5 starboard. This is labeled as center for the center tank. So for example, say we wanted to, again, we want to drop them in pairs. That's just for weight and balance. If you dropped one off the port wingtip, you'd end up being very light on the port side and heavy on the starboard side, and you might not be able to overcome that with ailerons. So what you would do is you would click station 1 and station 1, and now you have this one here and this one here selected to drop. Then you could do master arm, and spacebar would drop them. Alright, then you would want to deselect them. Alright, so we can actually drop something now. So again, these are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's your 5 starboard. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's your port side. On your port side, you also have your heater. So you click that. If we look behind the seat there, you can see there's a heater where my cursor is. That's for your cabin heat. I'll just push the thrust ahead so you can see. This is your center station, and that's your fuel pod fuel. So the fuel pod's the center station, and so that's reading us how much fuel's in there. So there's 186 gallons in that center tank. That will empty first. So once this reaches 0, you could drop your center tanks. We'll actually do that here now. So we have master arm on, which we need. We're going to select our center station. One of the reasons I set this up to use the trigger is, say we're going to drop some bombs on target. You could be looking out the plane and aiming at your target, either using guns or bombs. As long as your master arm's on, you have your stores selected, in this case the center tank. all we have to do is hit the space bar and we could drop either our bombs or in this case the fuel pod. So we'll watch the fuel pod drop and I'll just press space and that drops your center fuel tank. All right, so that pretty much does our cockpit tour here. In the next video I'll go ahead and we'll start her up and do a flight. Thanks for watching.